This is a direct character. I've always said that I'm not a saint, that I am a work in progress, but I will not be held hostage by...
2019, Oprah Winfrey had a special with child abuse victims of Michael Jackson. She went on to explain that when done right, child abuse feels good.
But you respect or maybe even love, and it feels good. I mean, if you're 7 years old and somebody, which I was trying to say this to my friends who had children, you're 7 years old and someone is stroking you, it feels good. Right. Even though you don't have a name for what that is, it feels good. And when I first said this years ago, people were like, you're crazy, because everybody wants to believe it's like sexual assault and you're being thrown up against the wall and you're being raped. And I have said for years, if the abuser is any good, you won't even know it's happened. You will be in it and you won't even know it's happened.
The situation has spiraled into something far more dangerous, and Naomi Campbell just dragged it out into the light, straight at Oprah Winfrey. This isn't quiet anymore. Naomi is speaking, exposing, and pulling one of the most untouchable figures in Hollywood directly into the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. And this time, it's not rumor. She's claiming that Oprah's own Girls Academy in Africa may have been used inside Epstein's orbit. Let that settle. For years, people whispered about Naomi's connections in silence. But now, everything has shifted. She's pushing further, naming Oprah, and hinting at something far deeper. A system built on power, control, and protection. From Jeffrey Epstein to Harvey Weinstein to even Oprah's past links to João Teixeira de Faria, the pattern is starting to surface. And Naomi is making sure no one looks away. The shield is breaking, the story is unraveling, and this time, Naomi isn't falling alone. She wants the whole truth dragged into daylight.
Stuck in a world where grown-ups were allowed to do whatever they wanted, and I was lost. I mean, look at Naomi Campbell's face. You know, shouldn't she be saying, what is a little girl doing at my birthday?
One of my best friends, she's not here today. She was human by Naomi Campbell.
Oprah Winfrey built an empire on control and influence, and now Naomi Campbell has dragged it straight into the light. If you thought the Jeffrey Epstein story had already reached its most complicated point, think again. Because this isn't quiet tension anymore. It's turning hostile. It's getting personal. So the real question is, why now? Why is Naomi unloading everything on Oprah at this exact moment? For years, people predicted this would happen, that eventually those inside the circle would stop protecting each other and start turning. The warning signs were already there, especially when Bill Clinton publicly challenged the DOJ and pushed for the full, unredacted files to be released. That was the signal. But even then, no one expected this. No one expected Naomi to move this fast or this aggressively. And the first name she places at the center of it all? Oprah. That alone tells you this isn't random, it's calculated. From the very beginning, the intention is clear. Naomi understands the pressure closing in around her. She knows exactly how serious this has become. And instead of absorbing it, she redirects it towards someone bigger, someone more powerful. And Oprah fits that role perfectly. But in doing that, Naomi doesn't calm the situation. She escalates it. Because this isn't just deflection anymore, this is exposure. And when you look at how deep Jeffrey Epstein's case runs, her reaction starts to make sense. If you followed this story for any amount of time, Naomi's name resurfacing isn't shocking. It never really disappeared. The questions were always there, lingering, unresolved, waiting, and now they're back. Looking at everything again, it's becoming harder to believe the version we were given. Because when the rumors first surfaced, Naomi didn't stay quiet. She moved quickly, got ahead of it, controlled the narrative, created distance, insisted she didn't know, said she was introduced through someone else, and reacted with the same shock as everyone else. That was the version, the one she held on to, the one the public was meant to accept.
And supermodel Naomi Campbell is in hot water. She is accused of financial misconduct involving an anti-poverty charity that she founded.
What he's done is indefensible. And when I heard of what he'd done, it sickened me to my stomach, just like everybody else. Because I've had my fair share of predators, and thank God that I had good people around me that protected me from this.
This is where the skepticism really took hold. and people started looking at Naomi Campbell differently. Because for a lot of observers, that version didn't land. It didn't feel convincing. This wasn't some random encounter with Jeffrey Epstein at one distant, forgettable event, and then nothing. She was there, in those same rooms, at those same gatherings, moving through those same circles, again and again. And for many people, that made one claim harder and harder to accept, that she didn't know. Because proximity changes everything. Then there's her connection to Sean Combs, the way she spoke about him publicly, called him family, described him like a brother, placed herself inside that circle. And then, the moment pressure hit, the narrative shifted, distance appeared, the connection softened, reframed, almost erased, and people noticed. Because when that pattern repeats, it stops looking random. It starts looking deliberate. And that's exactly why, when her name began surfacing again inside the documents, it didn't shock people. It confirmed something they already suspected, a pattern, a proximity that never really disappeared. So now, with everything escalating, one thing is becoming clear. She has no intention of carrying this alone. The direction she's taking now is deliberate. Because what she just placed on Oprah Winfrey is not light, and it's not new. Allegations connecting Oprah, Naomi, and figures like Harvey Weinstein have circulated before, including claims from British actress Katie Noble, who publicly accused them of enabling access that led to abuse. So when this resurfaces now, it doesn't feel like a coincidence. It feels like escalation.
And he was with people in which I admired dearly. He was with Naomi Campbell, he had Oprah Winfrey there with him, who entered the room and was swinging off his arm and just seemed like a very dear friend.
And Katie Noble wasn't the only name being pulled into these claims. There were other accounts, other allegations, all pointing in the same direction around Oprah Winfrey. And that's where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Because publicly, Oprah has built an image as a vocal advocate against abuse in Hollywood, a figure who stands with victims, who speaks out, who leads the conversation. That's the persona. But the accusations paint a very different picture. And that contrast is what raises questions. Because it's not just about what is said publicly, it's about what happens behind the scenes. Even her past actions have been pulled back into focus, including her distancing from Michael Jackson, a move some believe reshaped how she was perceived. Back in 1993, Michael Jackson, known for his extreme privacy, sat down with Oprah for a rare, high-profile interview at Neverland Ranch. That moment mattered. It elevated Oprah's influence even further and appeared to cement a connection between them, at least at the time.
Black artists have been taken advantage of completely. And it's time now that we have to put a stop to this incredible injustice.
You are not taking anything to change the color of your skin.
Oh God, no.
You did not purposely.
We're trying to control it, and using makeup evens it out because it makes blotches on.
She later described that connection as deeply personal, spoke about it repeatedly, framed it as a real friendship that lasted until his death. But after Michael Jackson was gone, the tone shifted sharply. Oprah Winfrey pivoted completely, and her focus locked in on Leaving Neverland, a documentary that cast Michael in a deeply damaging light. She didn't stay neutral, she leaned in, sat down with his accusers, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, the same men who, at different points, had walked back earlier claims, stating nothing inappropriate had occurred. And yet, they were given a platform, a massive one. That decision triggered backlash, a lot of it. Because Oprah framed it as something bigger, an attempt to spotlight abuse within the entertainment industry, a serious issue, an important conversation. But for many people, the pieces didn't align, not completely. Because when you factor in her past relationship with Michael, the inconsistencies in the accuser's accounts, and the timing of it all, it raised questions, uncomfortable ones. And over time, another narrative began to circulate, that her proximity to controversial figures wasn't isolated. It was a pattern, quietly known in certain circles, even publicly called out. 50 Cent didn't hold back after the documentary aired. He accused Oprah of selective targeting, pointing out the absence of names like Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein, while focusing heavily on figures like Michael Jackson. That criticism stuck, because it tapped into a broader concern: who gets exposed and who doesn't. Then there were other claims, more direct, more controversial, including statements from Gene Deal, who alleged that Oprah operated as a fixer within circles connected to Sean Combs. Allegations, not conclusions, but enough to keep the questions alive. And in a story like this, questions don't fade, they build.
I was like, yo, damn. He still got power like that? Somebody still like him like that? Because you know he was running with Oprah and them. He was running with that whole crew. Weinstein, Oprah, Epstein. He was running with that whole crew. They want to know how we're going to do it, how the public is going to take him. Is the public going to let him back in? And the public is not. The public is already canceling him. I don't believe the industry has canceled him yet. All those people who went to those Diddy parties, not one of them had came out and denounced what he had.
And this is where the story takes a darker turn, because the pattern doesn't stop there. Just like Naomi Campbell, Oprah Winfrey has a history that keeps circling back to the same type of figures: powerful, influential, and eventually deeply controversial. One name stands out: João Teixeira de Faria, a man once presented to the world as a spiritual healer, someone claiming to perform miracles. But behind that image, a very different reality began to emerge: allegations, exposure, a complete collapse of credibility. And yet, for years, Oprah didn't distance herself. She elevated him, brought him onto her platform, repeatedly introduced him to a global audience as something extraordinary, something trustworthy, almost untouchable. That endorsement mattered, because when someone with that level of influence co-signs a figure like that, it amplifies everything: the reach, the trust, the access. And looking back now, that association doesn't just raise eyebrows, it raises serious questions.
Ever happened. One of the most famous spiritual healers in the world rarely talks to anyone on camera. John of God agreed to sit down with me under a mango tree on the grounds of the casa. A group of his patients gathered to watch. John of God speaks only Portuguese, so Heather Cumming helped translate.
Ready, guys? You describe yourself as a spiritual medium. What does that mean, a medium?
Médium, eu sou espiritualista.
As a medium, he's a spiritualist. He believes a great deal in God, and he practices this mission already 55 years.
This is where the silence becomes harder to ignore, because when João Teixeira de Faria was finally exposed, the allegations were severe, disturbing, impossible to ignore. And yet, Oprah Winfrey didn't publicly confront it. There was no direct condemnation, no visible attempt to distance herself in real time, no clear statement expressing outrage, just silence. The connection faded quietly, without explanation, without accountability. And that absence of response is what people began focusing on. Because even Naomi Campbell, at the very least, addressed her connection to Jeffrey Epstein, even if it was a denial. But here, there wasn't even that. No denial, no acknowledgement. And that raised a different kind of question. Not just what was known, but why nothing was said. And then the narrative escalates. Because within industry circles, rumors didn't just stop at association, they expanded. Allegations began circulating that Oprah wasn't just adjacent to powerful figures under scrutiny, but may have played a role in protecting them. Claims that she helped shield individuals like Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein from the full impact of accusations against them. Allegations, not proven conclusions, but repeated enough to keep resurfacing, even publicly. Rose McGowan spoke out directly, challenging Oprah's public image, questioning the gap between perception and reality. And she wasn't the only one. Seal also weighed in, suggesting that the idea Oprah didn't know about Weinstein's behavior was difficult to accept, pointing to the disconnect between proximity and claimed awareness. And then something else happened. Shortly after those statements, Seal himself became part of headlines, facing accusations of his own, and that timing raised eyebrows, sparked speculation, questions about coincidence, or something more strategic. But here's the reality. Speculation fills the gaps where answers are missing, and in this story, there are still a lot of gaps. Because behind all of this, there's a pattern emerging: connections, silence, proximity to power. And now, with everything being dragged back into the open, the details that were once buried aren't staying buried anymore.
Biggest life secret. And I lived in such fear of that secret coming out. It was my great life shame. I thought, oh my God, I'm a national television personality. If that ever came out, my God, people are gonna hate me. They're gonna think this, they're gonna think that.
Right now, Naomi Campbell is under intense scrutiny, and it all traces back to the Jeffrey Epstein files. Because according to what's being circulated, those documents contain details that place her far deeper inside the network than previously believed. Claims that go beyond proximity and move into something far more serious. Allegations suggesting she was tied to activities involving vulnerable children, including reports of missing girls that investigators struggled to explain, and only began to make sense when her name entered the frame. That's the claim. And it's why attention around her has escalated so quickly. Because once those connections are suggested, everything changes. Now, there's also her long-standing involvement with organizations like Children of the Rising Sun in Kenya, a cause she's publicly supported since 2013. A place she has described as deeply personal, almost like family. And for years, that's how it was seen, as charity, as advocacy, as something admirable. But now, with these files being examined, people are revisiting everything, reinterpreting intent, questioning what was really happening behind the scenes. Because within those same documents, her name reportedly appears hundreds of times. References spanning years, communications, connections, a timeline that stretches from 2001 to 2016. And within that period, there are repeated interactions with Jeffrey Epstein, invitations to exclusive events, high-profile gatherings, even personal celebrations, like her milestone birthday hosted by her then-partner Vladislav Doronin. Events described as private, restricted, for close circles only, and yet Epstein was included. According to email records, he accepted, attended, often alongside Ghislaine Maxwell. And it didn't stop there, because other invitations followed. Industry galas, fashion events, including a major celebration in Paris marking her career, where Epstein was again on the list. Then there are the communications themselves, messages that suggest ongoing contact, in some cases, requests, direct outreach, including instances where she was asking to coordinate travel, specifically access to Epstein's private plane, emails referencing urgency, follow-ups, attempts to reconnect, even internal notes from Epstein's staff tracking her availability, reminding him to call her back. One message mentioning she was in the middle of a facial and would return the call shortly. Another, more direct, "I want to meet Jeffrey," followed by travel details, timing, and a casual sign-off. All of it documented, archived, and now being pulled back into the spotlight.
Naomi was very smart though, because she kept most of her communications by phone. It was, "Please call Naomi. Naomi wants you to call her," or vice versa, they were trying to get hold of her. And in fact, after a certain amount of time, it looked like she even stopped communicating with Jeffrey and Ghislaine and only directly with his assistant, Leslie.
He was with people in which I admired dearly. He was with Naomi Campbell. He had Oprah Winfrey there with him, who entered the room and was swinging off his arm.
And they try to use a girl that you might like, or you may think you might like, or they think you might like her, or whatever, to convince you to lay down your guards with them.
Did Naomi Campbell play a role in Oprah and Jeffrey Epstein's darkest secrets?
Are you just a petulant diva who wants things her own way, and if you don't get things your own way, you feel you have the right?
Naomi Campbell's name doesn't just surface in conversations, it appears in documentation, including a list circulated with instructions on how to contact Jeffrey Epstein while he was in custody. A list that included multiple names, addresses, guidelines for sending letters, books, and messages into the prison system. And Naomi's name was on it. According to her legal team, she had no knowledge of that list, no awareness of who created it, no involvement in requesting Epstein's address, no attempt to contact him while he was incarcerated. That's her position. But even that explanation raises another issue, because separate from any direct communication, her name was still being used by Epstein himself as leverage, as a tool. Back in 2020, one victim, who says she first encountered Epstein at just 15 years old, described how he promised her access to opportunity, a career path, specifically a role connected to Victoria's Secret. And to make that promise feel real, he invoked Naomi's name, said he knew her, used that connection to build trust. And according to the account, it worked. The victim was drawn in, pulled closer, into a situation she didn't fully understand. And what she didn't expect was for Epstein to follow through by arranging an introduction, bringing Naomi into that space, at least according to the claim. And that account isn't isolated. Another victim, Virginia Giuffre, also described being introduced to Naomi by Epstein, placing her in the same environment, at the same time, including a well-documented moment, Naomi's 31st birthday celebration in 2001, an event attended by high-profile guests, where, according to testimony, a young girl stood among them, out of place, unnoticed. And that's where the narrative deepens, because beyond names, beyond appearances, there are more serious claims being discussed. Allegations suggesting Naomi's involvement extended further into facilitating movement, connecting people, possibly linking vulnerable individuals to Epstein's network. These are allegations, not proven conclusions, but they are being repeated by multiple voices across different accounts, and that's why they aren't fading. They're building.
The Relief is a poverty aid charity she founded. The UK charity watchdog found only a small amount of the millions of pounds it raised actually went to good causes. Over 5 years, the charity raised £4.8 million from fashion shows and events, but only paid £389,000 in grants to partner charities. In 2019, the charity's income was £1.7 million, and they gave £5,500.
And then another layer surfaces, because the financial records don't fully align. There were expenditures flagged as questionable, large amounts, four-figure charges linked to luxury hotels, spa treatments, private security, all tied back to Naomi Campbell. And that's where the scrutiny intensified. Because once charity funds are involved, the threshold changes. It's no longer perception, it becomes accountability, which is why authorities stepped in. Restrictions followed, actions were taken, and Naomi responded, publicly, denying any wrongdoing, stating she had only just learned of the findings, expressing concern, and insisting an internal review was already underway. She emphasized that she wasn't directly managing the organization. That responsibility, she said, had been placed in the hands of legal counsel. And according to her, every dollar raised was intended for charitable use. That was her position, her defense. But at the time, it didn't settle the questions, because when trust is shaken, statements alone don't restore it.
Woman who worked as your assistant. She said you grabbed her by the throat, took her with a phone. Assaulting a photographer. Naomi scratched the cap's eye with her purse. The kicking and spitting at police officers on the bridges.
And now, the narrative shifts again, because some believe those financial irregularities weren't the real story. They were the cover, the surface, a distraction from something far more serious. The real question is what authorities were actually examining behind the scenes. Because according to circulating claims, this wasn't just about money. It was about people, young girls, cases that didn't add up, reports of disappearances, numbers that, if true, can't be ignored, can't be buried, can't be explained away. And that's why the focus around Naomi Campbell has intensified so rapidly. Because once allegations reach that level, everything changes. The stakes rise. The consequences become real. There are even claims suggesting federal attention, that investigators may already be digging deeper into her connections. Now, that doesn't mean conclusions, it means pressure, and pressure reveals everything. Because if enough evidence were ever established, the outcome wouldn't just affect her reputation. It could end everything. Her career, her legacy, her position inside those circles. And that brings us to the real question. What happens next? How does she respond when the pressure doesn't go away? Does she fight it publicly or handle it quietly behind closed doors? Because in a story like this, what happens in the shadows is often what matters most. And now I want to hear from you. Do you think Naomi Campbell is being positioned as the face of something bigger? Or is this the moment everything finally catches up to her? Drop your thoughts below, because this story is far from over.